From your experience, what are the primary pedagogical benefits of using particularly H5P videos or interactive videos in a blended learning environment, particularly?
In that I feel it's much more student-centered, it's much more engaging. And my theory there is that this is largely down to how it's designed, how it's set up, and that if we were to create something more interactive, more gamified, essentially something fun, digestible, without too heavy a cognitive load on students. With these H5P videos, they can get points, they can get little stars, and the students seem to enjoy that. So yeah, I suppose that's the idea.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Unfiltered by Empowered, the podcast series where we have unedited conversation with educators from around the world. I'm your host Anshul Lau. In a podcast, we have conversation with passionate educators to uncover the challenges, celebrate the successes, and inspire with real-life stories from front lines of education. Today, we are thrilled to have Daniel today, who works at Xi'an Jiaotong-Liverpool University and has joined us from China to share his innovative and insightful work relating to H5P videos and even blended learning and flip format that he has been teaching in. Daniel, welcome to Unfiltered by Empowered. To start
Thank
off,
you.
could you tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and any key research areas that you're working on?
Sure, yeah. I first really started teaching in EAP back in 2018 at a Hong Kong Chinese Partnership University in Zhuhai in southern China. Then went on to do a master degree in TESOL and applied linguistics at the University of Stirling. And that's really where I started thinking about the research side of education, and particularly areas such as learner autonomy and student engagement, which I discovered were pretty major issues, particularly in higher education in Asia, where students do tend to be fairly passive within the classroom and just don't do very much outside of the classroom. So kind of getting them to do more self-study, to engage more with materials outside of the classroom. And back in 2021 or 2022, I joined XJTLU, Xi'an Jiaotong-Liverpool University. This was in the midst of the pandemic. So all teaching was online for my first semester, and we
Okay.
used a hybrid model, which didn't quite work in semester two. With this hybrid model, we were meant to essentially teach online students and face-to-face students simultaneously, which really just meant that you were teaching one group and not the other, with quite high dropout rates, very low student engagement. But at the same time, I was doing a PG cert with the University of Liverpool, and really considering how we can take this model forward, how we can improve on current education, how we can increase learner autonomy in particular, but also student engagement. And one of my roles here for the last 2.5 years has been as a virtual learning environment representative, which basically means that I set up and manage the Moodle platform for my module. So it gives me quite a bit of Moodle data and quite a bit of insight into how students engage with this, how teachers engage with these materials. And I can experiment quite a bit with placing various types of content there, and seeing how effective that is.
Oh, that's brilliant. If I may ask, do you still have hybrid format of teaching at in your current role, or have you shifted away from hybrid now?
I would say we're shifted away from that. We are probably using something that could be called blended learning, in
Okay.
that students are expected to do self-study for between 3 and 6 hours per week, using various materials that are provided on a Moodle site for my module. And that includes PDFs, lecture recordings, video recordings. It includes vocabulary worksheets, additional texts and so on that should really develop their listening, reading, writing, and their somewhat speaking skills, I suppose, but also vocabulary.
In such a diverse role that you have got, that you're a virtual learning representative as well as you're leading on a couple of aspects. Do you have any particular area of interest or any key research that you're currently working on?
Yeah, I mean, one area of research that I'm working on that I've presented a bit on in a webinar about a month ago, I think, is on the use of interactive H5P videos to improve student engagement and academic performance on my module, which is English for specific academic purposes for mathematics students. I've worked on this research project with a colleague of mine for the entirety of last academic year. We now have fairly good results. We've had some time to analyze those results, and we are starting to look ahead to possibly doing a new research project next semester, which could be looking more at how teachers engage with technology and to what extent teachers feel that they are able to use this sort of technology in the classroom and to promote it to their own students.
Oh, that's brilliant. I think we'll start with the basics. I think you mentioned you are working with H5P videos on the project. What exactly are H5P videos, if you can elaborate for our listeners, and how do they enhance the blended learning experience for students?
Yeah, so firstly, I'd like to just divide H5P videos in two. H5P, first of all, is using HTML5 open source software that is available for free and can be placed on any sort of Moodle or Blackboard site. And that allows you to essentially create a series of quiz type questions. So that includes true and false, multiple choice, fill in the gap, etc., etc. Loads of different question types there, really, which can really increase students' engagement with a video, or for that matter, with a text or with an activity. You make it a lot more active, a lot more student-centered when they can't just passively skim through it and move on, but rather have to actively engage and do something, whether that is typing or selecting an option. It also has the advantage that students can check their own answers with H5P. They can retry it multiple times. And depending on the settings, you can provide them with various hints. You can require that students complete certain H5P activities before moving on to others. And then there's the video aspect. I've been creating my own videos using Camtasia, institutional video recording software. So that is, I believe it's called screencasting software, where I kind of show my screen, my face as I'm speaking, and I'm then able to go over any important documents, any PPTs, any sort of core knowledge for students as part of my video, explaining that hopefully pretty clearly in between 6 and 9 minutes. I try to keep it fairly short to make it more manageable for students and so that they don't have to spend too long on these videos. And then I include this, or we include this, I should say, my research partner does it as well, as part of a blended learning framework. And blended learning has got a lot of different definitions, but in this case, we would designate classroom time for students to engage with technology, and particularly these H5P videos, and also emphasize to students that they really should be engaging with these resources as part of their self-study. We have something like 4 hours of classroom teaching per week, which is not at all sufficient for students at this level, with them having to essentially be B2 plus on the CEPA scale by the end of year 2, and often come in with B1 or B1 plus level English.
That's brilliant. And from your experience, What are the primary pedagogical benefits of using particularly H5P videos or interactive videos in a blended learning environment particularly?
Yeah, I think I went into it a little bit in my previous answer, in that I feel it's much more student-centered, it's much more engaging. I was looking at some literature by people like Fisher et al., Ma and Lee, on the effectiveness of blended and flipped learning. And a lot of the studies are a bit mixed there. Some would say it increases engagement and academic performance. Others say that students are not particularly engaged or satisfied with this. And my theory there is that this is largely down to how it's designed, how it's set up, and that if we were to create something more interactive, more gamified, essentially something fun, digestible, without too heavy a cognitive load on students, to take a term from, what's her name, Bronje or something like that. What was it? Brain 2016 had the idea of cognitive load of videos having to be sort of manageable. So if we kind of limit the cognitive load, make it more interactive, more gamified, with these H5P videos, they can get points, they can get little stars, and the students seem to enjoy that. So yeah, I suppose that's the idea.
So how do the interactive elements in this video contribute in the forms of engagement, and how do you encourage students to possibly engage with these videos?
Um, I mean, some of the interactive elements would be that these sort of questions pop up as part of the video. And when interviewing the students, there were a couple of them that particularly mentioned things like stars and this little pling sound that they enjoyed, because it's kind of like a game. And I'd say most of these students, most of any students, would enjoy playing some sort of game, especially if it helps them to also prepare for important assessments or important tasks. Sorry, what was your second question there?
I just wanted to ask that how do you encourage students to engage with these videos particularly?
I would also send them an email.
Okay.
I send them these weekly reminder emails around about the same time every week, to encourage them to engage with these videos. I also then include this link to the videos as part of the email. And again, I'll highlight it in class. During class, when hopefully I'll see most of them, I'll remind them several times about where to find it, and also kind of show them where to find it. Because I have found that students' technical knowledge is fairly limited, at least with my students, mathematics students, and they often sort of struggle with both finding and really engaging with digital resources.
Yeah, absolutely. I think digital literacy is a critical factor in adopting blended learning or any kind of new approaches. So how do you assess and improve digital literacy among your students or faculty?
I mean,
Maybe
for
staff
for
even.
students, for students, first of all, I think it really has to be done in the classroom. You
Okay.
have to be there with the students to provide them with both emotional support, that it takes time. They've got time to do it. They can do it at their own pace. With me as a teacher being available to offer them support, to help with various things, and then also to do it as a matter of routine, that you can
Okay.
kind of come back to these things multiple times over the course of the semester. So it's not a one-time thing, but rather the students get more familiar with it over the course
Mm.
of the semester.
Yeah.
In my role as a VLE, just to answer your second question,
Yeah.
I have delivered a couple of COP sessions for staff on my module in terms of how to use technology. That's not always that feasible because people have their own schedules, and their own priorities. So attending those a bit of an issue. So presenting in forums like this, I think, are really important because we can record this, people can access it afterwards, and perhaps also publishing some sort of guides, just simplified guides to how to use tools such as H5P in teaching. I think
Yeah, I
that's
believe that.
helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that for teachers, particularly, there is a workload concern that would basically make them reluctant to having any or engaging with a new technology. Do you have any successful strategies that have proven effective in encouraging staff members, particularly? Or are they institutionally led that people have to use this as an opportunity? So how
I mean,
does
the
your institution
university,
approach the use of H5P videos or any new forms of blended learning approaches?
I mean, the university does promote technology and AI quite heavily. So there is that which is quite helpful. On my side, I offered a bit of technical support for people and just sort of encourage them to do so when I see them. But I feel a lot of it can also be simplified. We don't always need to go with the most advanced form of an H5P video. So rather than recording an H5P video, you could, for instance, download something from YouTube or just use a link to YouTube if that works, and then embed that with a few questions. Something that could be done in 10-15 minutes
Oh,
if
just
you
to
kind of
clarify, so
just.
you do not need to create a video from scratch. You can have an already recorded video and then add engagement to that video. So is it
Sure,
possible? Oh,
sure,
perfect.
yeah.
So this might simplify the work of academic staff so that at least they do not have to create a video from scratch. They could also add interactions to an existing video and make it engaging and interactive.
No, not at all. I find it useful to record videos, and this doesn't have to be the most advanced videos either. If you think about what academic staff regularly do, or what teaching staff regularly do, one thing is that we keep having to tell students things like how to find academic sources. Let's go to the library, let's click this, let's do this. Why not just record that once? For students, doesn't have to look fantastic, but I feel that the students would appreciate being able to see their teacher in the recording. You don't have to repeat yourself a bunch of times because you can tell
Yeah.
students to go and watch that. And then adding some H5P content will make it more interactive and will encourage greater engagement with these
Yeah.
videos.
I think you would agree, even if you mentioned earlier that hybrid teaching impacted the engagement. So how, when the videos are created by different academic staff and everybody has a diverse kind of skills in terms of creating videos or making use of tools, how would you ensure the quality of these videos that are created for the students? Because I
I
believe the
mean,
quality of the videos do impact the student learning experience. So is there a process that somebody would evaluate or review those videos before they're published, or if is there any kind of benchmarking on the training for staff members?
Um, not too much. I mean, I would
Okay,
say most teachers would just do it for their own groups of students,
okay,
and therefore it's largely up to them. I don't really have the time or the resources to evaluate their videos, and provided it's done on a fairly low level, at the level
okay.
of the class, then I don't see that much need for it either. Student teachers can kind of tell their students what they want them to know. And provided they do that reasonably clearly, then I don't see much of a need to have to go in and check all of that.
But is there any checklist
Instead,
that when people are creating, they can just follow a checklist and see, okay, my video meet these kind of requirements, so it's up to the mark.
I suppose we do have workbooks
Okay.
that we go over on a weekly basis. So I'd say for people new to it, just kind of go over something from the workbook that you would otherwise explain to the students in a regular class. And you can
Uh,
explain it in the same pace and perhaps with the same sort of gestures and stuff as if you were in the regular classroom.
Oh, that's brilliant. I think you mentioned that you're working with a colleague on this project. So is it possible for you to share some insights from the case study you have been conducting at this your current university regarding student engagement with H5P videos in particular?
Yeah, I've got over here actually. I can just have a look at a couple of points. So I did a thematic analysis on the interviews particularly, and a couple of interesting themes there that the higher proficiency learners kind of saw more of the point of these videos as a tool to review and remember and prepare for assessments or to develop skills. Whereas lower proficiency learners were not quite so sure about the purpose of the videos. And many of them just mentioned that this is good listening practice for them, that they used it kind of as a IELTS listening practice. But otherwise, a couple of things that led to changes were difficult questions that took them a lot of time, that were a bit frustrating, where they had to type answers and where the H5P was really particular about these answers. So I tried to move away from questions that are too particular, that require too particular an answer, because it kind of takes away from the video if students just get frustrated and close it.
Okay. And, and how does
Yeah.
the frequency of the engagement with these video correlates with students' performance in assessments?
Yeah, so the majority of students, first of all, only engage with the videos once or twice, once before class and perhaps one more time later in the same day. But the students who engage with it more frequently certainly did see improved academic performance in class tasks. We have
Okay.
in-class or in-class tasks here. And we did some correlation analysis using SPSS statistical software and did see some positive changes there. Slightly skewed perhaps by the fact that there was a fairly high dropout rate as part of the study, particularly for later assessments later on in the course. And that's due to this EAP module running alongside their majors, and that they would have quite heavy workload for their majors around about the middle of the semester.
And how particularly do you measure the effectiveness of interactivity in these videos? Do you have any particular metrics or feedback mechanism that you uh, follow to get like from students, or how to evaluate the success of these videos in terms of interactions?
No, I mean, talk to the students, thematically
Okay,
analyze what they say. I think is key because engagement
absolutely.
is really difficult to quantify otherwise. So I'd talk to them and but also ask them sort of what are they doing during the video? Do they take notes? How long do they spend on the videos? What do they find most useful? But also kind of how would they like to use these videos in the future? And to that latter point, a lot of students would actually like to see these videos before the class as perhaps a form of flipped learning.
And have you even explored opportunities for students to create their own H5P content as a part of their learning process?
I haven't, no. I'm not sure if it's feasible within
Okay.
the confines of this EAP module because it is running alongside the mathematics module and students do have a fairly limited amount of time. Um, I think it would be more appropriate for slightly more mature students. So
Absolutely.
possibly during the summer between year two and year three, that something like that could be introduced. But yeah, time is limited.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of things to cover, and the students at the same time have a fairly heavy sort of schedule with their mathematics majors.
And how do you ensure that the videos that you have been created for your module or even journal purposes are digitally inclusive in nature, and it even meets the needs of any student with any particular disability?
I go over it in multiple ways. So I would show them the content on the screen. highlighting that, perhaps spotlighting something. I can then repeat it both while saying it and perhaps also by emphasizing some of the text on the screen. And then if it's particularly important, then I would include some question to further highlight the importance of this aspect. So in that sense, I suppose they can engage with it in multiple ways, that they see it on the screen, they hear it from my side, and then they also may have to answer some question about it, which further increases their engagement with the concept. So to take an example there, one video was about finding academic sources, and then I'd show them the library website, explain to them what I'm doing, going over this, and then also I'd require them to answer some question. But following from that, as part of the class, I think it's also good to integrate these with the course content and say, okay, now you've watched me do this on the library website. Let's see if you take out your own device. Let's see if you can do that following the same steps. If you don't remember it, go back to the video, rewatch that section if need be.
I think you mentioned even that you seek feedback from the students. So has there been any significant feedback that you received from students that improved the learning experience with the videos that you create?
Yeah, I think so. Navigation within the videos is one area that I've worked a bit on. And part of that was creating a bookmarks menu so that students can automatically and fairly quickly navigate to a particular section within the video rather than having to watch the entirety until that point. So if they're only interested in evaluating sources, they can just click on that, navigate to the relevant section and watch that. I have looked into developing subtitles for the videos after getting feedback on that, but I haven't really found a good way to do so yet. That's something I'm continuing to look into. And then I also continue to adjust question types and the way that questions are designed to make them fairly easy for students to solve, while at the same time requiring some critical thinking.
I think we can certainly catch up after this session just to discuss more. There are some AI softwares that could assist you with seamlessly creating captions as well as transcript for the videos that you might already have. So that might make the life so much easier and convenient.
Sure, yeah. Animaker is one that I'm exploring a bit at the moment, and
Okay.
that might be an option,
Like
but not sure yet.
even with this, like creating transcript or creating captions and maybe even different languages sometime, or like you're based in China, maybe in Chinese as well as English, that would mean a lot of workload for a new staff member coming into supporting blended learning and following the H5P approach. So how do you overcome skepticism or resistance from educators towards adopting H5P or any other digital tools for teaching purposes?
I mean, one thing that I should clarify there is that I don't require anyone to do this.
Okay.
A lot of the content is created by myself, and H5P includes a lot of much simpler activities that could be created in a matter of minutes rather than perhaps on longer time frames. So a couple of my colleagues are already creating H5P content over the course of the semester, and we're then able to quickly have a look over that, pilot it, and just check that it's working on the side of teachers, perhaps doing that the previous week, uploading it to the Moodle site, and then students can access that during the following week. So yes, I've seen about 3 colleagues already getting involved to varying extents. I don't think any of them are creating videos because of the time amount that might be spent creating
Absolutely.
videos, but certainly a variety of other H5P content.
So your approach is to basically inspire colleagues and then they're keen and they learn it and then do it, basically.
Essentially inspire and also provide them with tech support, in the sense that I'm kind of around, I'm available to help people who are interested in kind of developing something for their students.
And how do you ensure that you're integrating H5P videos or any forms of other digital tools, they align with the learning objectives of a course or a program?
I collaborate a bit with the module leader for my module. I can look at the intended learning outcomes for the week on a weekly basis rather than necessarily on a single lesson basis. And then I will also look at the assessments, at assessment task sheets, and at what sort of skills are particularly important for students to develop. So often when I look at the script, before I kind of record a video, I will try to have a conversation with the module leader if he's not too busy about whether there's something else that I should be considering to include or whether it's something that's less important that I could perhaps drop.
And so what features, I think, with your experience of creating H5P videos, are there any particular features that have been the most effective in promoting interactive learning?
Um, Yeah, I mean, just kind of having questions embedded within the video, pop-up questions, I think, particularly with fairly simple multiple choice. You select an option, you click check. It's fairly simple for students to complete. It's fairly fun in that you get stars and stuff popping up on the page. And I feel that that's probably the most effective aspect of increasing engagement here.
Well, that's brilliant. And just want to confirm, does students see each other's answers, or is there a possibility of collaboration, or do they only work independently and engage with the videos?
They do kind of work independently with the videos, but you can certainly have students work on a single device. You could have, say, 2 or 3 students working together on one device, helping each other to answer the questions.
And with, like you even mentioned in the beginning, that there are some free sources that people can use to create videos and work with H5P. And with increasing concerns about data privacy and security, how does H5P ensure the protection of student information if anybody is
Um,
using any free source, particularly?
I'm not really including any student information within the
Okay.
H5P resources, and H5P is open source, so I'm not entirely sure about that. I
Okay.
haven't really looked into it because
Yeah.
it doesn't really involve any private information.
Yeah, absolutely. I just asked because sometimes the free tools do make use of our data, our engagement, or anything, how we respond and our behavior. So just wanted to check that have we considered any like concerns around data privacy or student usage or behavior?
No, I mean, this doesn't seem to be much of a concern in that
Okay.
students don't have to sign up for it. They don't have to provide any information whatsoever. And a link to the H5P content is provided directly on the Moodle site. So that opening that link, they just get the H5P resource directly. It
Oh,
appears very
absolutely.
much as though as any other resource on the Moodle page.
That's brilliant. And if anybody as a new professional wants to learn about H5P, so what type of training or professional development do you recommend for any educator who want to start with H5P?
I mean, just having a look at h5p.org, they've got examples, documentation there, and then I would say trying around some of the basic features. There are a couple of fill in the blank sort of activities, and just taking a look at some of those, trying to create some of those. That shouldn't be very complicated because their own website do provide fairly detailed instructions and examples of how to create these sort of activities.
Oh, that's perfect. I think then we would even share some links and resources in the description of this podcast. If you want to have a listen to it or have a access to it, please ensure just to you click those links to get the information. And Daniel, where do you see the future of educational technology heading, particularly in relation to blended learning or flipped learning approaches? I know we have talked mainly about H5P videos. Are there any other technologies that you're incorporating or exploring?
There are some that I'm exploring, yes. So I briefly mentioned Animaker earlier, being able to create animations, not necessarily including yourself. Gamification involving things like Kahoot and Quizlet, Mentimeter perhaps being included as one aspect. So what I'd really like to see is taking the old blended learning model and making it more interactive, more gamified, and essentially more fun for students to engage with, so as to create a bit more intrinsic motivation to engage with the resources that we would provide on a Moodle site for students to use. And that, I think, would be, to a certain extent, resolving issues surrounding students not accessing self-study materials and not really engaging with courses after the first couple of weeks.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned the range of approaches and things people can use. How do you ensure that if when any educator is adopting these different ideas like gamification, animating some videos, how do they balance it up in terms of designing the delivery model? Because we also need to ensure that we are not overwhelming the students with range of technologies and diversity of information through different mediums. Have you had
Yeah,
any
I
experience?
think we have to be a bit careful there. We have to think about integration of the sources. We have to consider to what extent to the students' own digital literacy skills and their preferences for the use of technology. So I'd say gradually integrating technology within the curriculum is probably the best way to go, ensuring that students are comfortable with a particular tool before trying to introduce another one. So if taking something like Quizlet or Kahoot, these are quite good for gamification and could be used on a fairly regular basis. But we also want to ensure that communicative activities still take center stage within the class, that we still have plenty of opportunities to communicate and to be human really within the classroom.
Well, that's a very valuable suggestion that you have just provided. And people need to be mindful about what they're uh, integrating. They need to be more communicative, even seeking feedback from students. That should help them. I
Yeah,
think we have,
definitely. Talking to students about how they feel about this.
yep, absolutely. And I think my knowledge around H5P videos have really been enhanced today after the conversation with you. And before we close, uh, where can our listeners find more about your work or get in touch with you for further discussion? And if there is an opportunity for collaboration, how can they reach out to you?
Well, I'm currently working on a research article on the case study, which we're hoping to publish sometime late this year or early next year. But otherwise, you'd be able to reach me at my XJTLU email address, Daniel Pigou at xjtlu.edu.cn, or you'd be welcome to contact me on LinkedIn as well.
Thank you so much. We'll share all these contact details in our description. So feel free to reach out to Daniel. And then that brings us to end of today's episode of Unfiltered by Empowered. A huge thank you to Daniel for joining us and sharing such valuable insights for highlighting usefulness of H5P videos to increase engagement, learning outcomes, and academic performance. Thank you to all our listeners for tuning in. We hope this conversation inspires you to think about how you can use interactive H5P videos for blended or flipped delivery format. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay updated on all our latest episodes. Until next time, stay curious and stay empowered. Thank you.